Call of Duty. It's a series that for some is comfort food and for others is a cash grab that nickels and dimes its player base. But in 2003, no one knew Call of Duty was going to be a juggernaut. Call of Duty was just another World War II shooter in a sea of World War II shooters. Yet Call of Duty's polish and scale made it a hit, and as they say, the rest is history. With the series' rising success, the franchise made its way to every platform possible. While PC and next-gen owners were treated to the original Call of Duty and its sequel, the 6th-gen consoles got various spin-offs. Said spin-offs were Call of Duty Finest Hour, Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, and Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts. Each game was handled by a different studio and released to varying degrees of success. So grab your rifle and polish your boots as we explore Call of Duty's console spin-offs.
Europe, 1940. Hitler's ruthless quest to extend Germany's borders has his people at war with the world.
Released in 2004, Finest Hour was developed by Spark Unlimited. The fledgling studio was comprised mostly of former Medal of Honor devs, making Finest Hour a spiritual successor to EA's then popular shooter. The plot is split between 3 campaigns set in the Russian, British, and American theaters. The Russian campaign follows fresh-faced recruit Alexander Sokolov, the Russian sniper Tanya Pavlovna, and tank driver Nikolai Badanov as they fight to keep Stalingrad out of the Nazis' grasp. The British campaign follows Edward Carlisle as him and his squad take on Erwin Rommel's forces in North Africa. The American campaign follows Sergeant Chuck Walker, a member of the Big Red One tasked with taking control of the bridge at Remagen, which would give the Allies easy access into Germany.
I got word on the wireless that some of our old mates from the long-range desert group are lying doggo in an old fortress surrounded by Jerrys. We've got to save them. Those chaps found a shortcut through the desert that leads straight to Rommel's back door.
The story is basic, but I like how it shows different sides of the same conflict. Most World War II games tend to show the war from America's point of view, so I like that this game shows the fight from a global perspective. Every playable character is given their own backstory, which is a step above the usual faceless soldiers you play as. Another thing the campaigns have going for them is their look and feel. The Russian campaign starts bombastic, with your main character narrowly avoiding the chaos around him with nothing but a rifle clip in his hand. Then it becomes more subdued as you take control of a sniper tasked with protecting various targets. The British campaign is much more adventurous, and the American campaign plays out like a classic World War II flick.
Main assault will begin when my group hits the east entrance to town. Let's move out, and when you see the Germans... all right. Mount up and give them hell.
Finest Hour storytelling feels like an evolution of Medal of Honors. The game is devoted to educating you on the war as much as it is wowing you with spectacle. The cutscenes that play in between missions break down the current state of the war. If this game accomplished anything, it was getting 13-year-olds interested in learning more about World War II.
The unconditional surrender of all German forces to the Allies, without which President Roosevelt had declared the war could not end, would not be long in the making. A world that had long been at war would soon be able to rejoice.
Finest Hour plays like any military shooter from the last 20 years. You'll complete objectives and gun down lots of Nazis. It's got its jank, but the gameplay delivers. The 5 to 6 hour campaign sees you fight the Axis in different theaters. The shootouts are broken up with various set pieces. This includes segments where you pilot a tank or defend a warehouse for 10 minutes. And I'm not joking, you spend 10 minutes in real time holding the line against approaching Nazis. In any other game, something would happen to stop the clock, but not the case here. It's tense, it had me sweating bullets, and I loved it.
Do not count days! Do not count miles! Count only the number of Germans you have killed!
The weapon roster is familiar stuff. There are the expected guns like the M1 Garand, the MP40, and the Kar 98K, along with Russian and British weapons like the PPSH and Sten submachine gun. The game has a 2-weapon limit, so choose wisely.
A bridge across the Rhine River would give us a direct line to move tanks and men straight into Germany. Those Germans aren't foolish enough to let that happen.
Finest Hour isn't groundbreaking, but what it does well. The different characters and locations kept me engaged, even when the game's age reared its ugly head. There were several points while I was playing where I realized, yep, this is a 6th-gen shooter. For starters, the checkpoint system is brutal. Most missions give you one checkpoint and a handful give you none. If you die, you either start from the beginning or must redo 15 to 20 minutes of gameplay. The poor checkpoints wouldn't be so bad if the difficulty wasn't so unbalanced. The Russian and British campaigns are reasonably challenging, but the American campaign is a gauntlet. Surprise machine gunners and enemy ambushes wait around every corner, and no matter how carefully you play, you're going to get shot in the ass often.
Fuck!
You have squad mates, but all they do is give the illusion that they're helping when really, they're an inconvenience.
Take your men across and capture this bridge before the Germans blow it up.
Are you crazy? We'll get slaughtered.
That's not a suggestion, that is a direct order. Move out, or I'll execute you for treason myself.
The presentation is a mixed bag. The characters look ropey, and on PS2, the frame rate chugs and chugs hard. It's also dark. Not narratively dark, but more like I can't see shit dark. Nighttime stages and the sewer levels are a pain to get through because of how murky everything is. It's not a good sign when I had to turn my monitor up to max brightness just to make out where the exit was. That's not to say the graphics are entirely bad. The environments look nice, and the moments where battlefields are teeming with soldiers are impressive given the hardware constraints. Voice acting and music are solid, with Michael Giacchino's score sounding like a spiritual successor to his work on Medal of Honor. The cast consists of veteran and big-name actors, most notably Dennis Haysbert and Brian Johnson. Yes, that Brian Johnson.
Nice bonfire you lit up today, comrades. That should keep us warm most of the winter.
Call of Duty Finest Hour is Call of Duty's not-so-finest hour. I can tell Spark wanted to create a genuine World War II experience, but lofty ambitions only get you so far. For every fun shootout or awesome set piece, there's a bullshit enemy encounter and a sewer to wade through. I want to like Finest Hour, I really do, but time has not been kind to this game. It's still worth a look just to see Call of Duty in its infancy, but don't go in expecting a masterpiece. Call of Duty Finest Hour gets a 5 out of 10. Following Finest Hour, Spark Unlimited got into legal trouble with Activision, resulting in a falling out between the two companies. The next game, Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, was put in the hands of Treyarch. Before they were the Call of Duty guys, they were the Spider-Man guys. Big Red 1 is significant because not only was this their first COD game, but this was also the first COD I ever played. I don't remember much, other than I got it not long after getting my PS2 for Christmas in 2008. Because Big Red 1 was T for teen, I could play Call of Duty without worrying about upsetting my parents. Of the 3 games I played for this video, this was the one I was most curious to see how it held up.
Man, I'm starving. I haven't eaten nothing since we left the ship. Hey, you know, my dad runs a deli back in the Bronx, makes the best pastrami sandwiches you'll ever eat.
Brooklyn, you ain't quite right.
Kinda like your sister, huh, you friggin' hayseed?
The game follows a squad in the 1st Infantry Division, better known as the Big Red 1 for the red number they had on their patch. Said squad includes Stephen Kelly, Victor Vic Delaney, Alvin Brooklyn Bloomfield, and you, Roland Roger. The campaign follows this squad as they fight through the sands of North Africa and into the heart of Europe.
It ain't gonna be so bad. Huck said the Germans are retreating. That's why the brass ordered another push.
He said that the last 5 times we've gone in.
Big Red 1 is a more focused tale compared to Finest Hour's globetrotting theatrics. It's a story of a group of young men and their evolution from cocky yet optimistic to hardened husk burnout from constant fighting. It's essentially a Band of Brothers game, to the point they got several actors from the critically acclaimed show to voice and perform motion capture. It's these performances that carry the story. Where it stumbles is when the game tries to get you to care about them.
I'm on it!
It doesn't work because 1. The main character is a silent protagonist, and 2. Your allies are invincible until it's their time to die. The silent protagonist doesn't work because everyone acknowledges you even though you don't utter a peep. There's a bit where you play as the protagonist's brother, a B-17 pilot, and you hear him speak. Knowing this made me even more confused as to why the main guy didn't get some sort of voiceover.
Looks like Goering's boys are on the run. Outstanding work, son. I'm putting you in for corporal. You deserve it.
Yeah, I guess you done all right out there.
The game tries to tug on your heartstrings by killing off key characters, but it fails because up until then, they've shrugged off every bullet that's been shot their way. I never got the sense the characters were vulnerable, unlike, say, World at War, where it felt like anyone could die at any moment.
I still can't believe it.
That son of a bitch. Selfish, mean-spirited bulldog was the toughest soldier we had.
The ending is underwhelming. Spoilers ahead, but after they sabotage a V-2 rocket, the game just sort of ends. We get some narration explaining the Big Red One fought in the Battle of the Bulge, but we never see it. It would have been a better send-off for the characters instead of an exposition dump.
Think I might actually make it home from this lousy war. Incoming! Find cover! Get out of there!
Gameplay has seen various improvements. It's not as janky as Finest Hour, and the difficulty curve is much less steep. Cheap shots are as prominent, and the snappier controls make it easy to stop and pop at enemies. Speaking of which, the game pits you against French and Italian forces in addition to the usual goose steppers. Having not played Big Red One in years, I was surprised to see them. They don't behave differently than Nazis, but it was a welcome inclusion. Another surprise was the B-17 bomber mission, where you're tasked with taking out Nazi planes and performing bombing runs. It starts simple, but escalates as more planes attack and you struggle to make it out in one piece.
Dredge, I have to congratulate you for today. You did an incredible job. I'm gonna see that you're put up for a medal. You deserve it.
Man, I'm gonna have to write home about this.
Big Red One feels like Treyarch's rough draft for what they would accomplish in later COD games. Several set pieces reminded me of moments from World at War, and the game's character-driven approach feels like a blueprint for what we saw in Black Ops. Because this is a rough draft, it's not as polished. The big issue for me was its linearity. You know how people complain about Call of Duty campaigns being too linear? Well, it was a problem all the way back on the PS2. It's so linear that you can't even jump over sandbags. At least Finest Hour offered branching paths for some of its levels. Big Red One feels like it's holding your hand, leading you from one objective marker to the next.
Tell him, would you?
You're full of it, Brooklyn.
Hey, how many times I gotta tell you I'm from the Bronx?
Just be glad you're not dead.
Visually, Big Red One looks better than Finest Hour. There are some questionable moments, but the game looks nice. I think the best parts are when you look upon the horizon and see scores of troops scurrying along the hillside. It makes the player feel like they're part of a bigger fight. The voice acting and motion capture performances are well done. The motion capture is quite impressive considering the hardware, and there's some surprise star power in the form of Mark Hamill, who voices the narrator.
Brooklyn says the U.S. Army consists of the Big Red One and 10 million replacements.
I'm beginning to think Army Brass agrees, Schmitty.
Call of Duty 2 Big Red One hasn't aged as bad as Finest Hour, and this being Treyarch's first crack at COD, it's a decent attempt. Where it stumbles is making you care about your brothers in arms. Great acting only gets you so far when the main character is quiet as a church mouse and everyone else is a walking Terminator. The gameplay is better, but I could do without the generous hand-holding. I half expected the game to give me a lollipop after beating it. Call of Duty 2 Big Red One gets a 7 out of 10. By the late 2000s, people were tired of World War II. There were only so many times you could storm the beaches of Normandy and gun down goose steppers before it got old. Then Infinity Ward changed the game with 2007's Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. It turned Call of Duty from a Medal of Honor killer into a gaming legend. This didn't stop Treyarch from giving World War II its swan song with 2008's Call of Duty World at War. World at War showed a different side of war, one that was darker, more cynical. It had flamethrowers, shit-your-pants bonsai charges, the first incarnation of zombies, and Victor Reznov, voiced by the mighty Gary Oldman. World at War released on consoles, like all the consoles. PS2 owners got World at War, but not the same one as others did. Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts isn't a port. It's a spin-off that uses the characters and settings from Treyarch's game to tell its own story. This change was reflected in the developer, Rebellion, a studio with the best-to-worst track record in gaming history. Fun fact, Final Fronts was going to be one of my first videos, but due to various circumstances, it didn't happen. This allowed me to revisit Final Fronts with a fresh perspective, and after replaying it, I can safely say Final Fronts is without a doubt one of the games of all time.
Turn hot!
Okay, let's see what we've got. Sound off. Turner.
Aye, aye, sir.
Polanski.
Aye, sir!
Miller. Where is your weapon, Marine? Get over to that table and pick up a rifle, Miller.
The plot loosely follows the HD game. You play as new recruit Miller and partake in the United States' efforts to liberate the Pacific from Japan's grasp. The game switches between the fight in the Pacific to the fight in Europe, where the British and Americans are working to defeat the Nazi menace.
We were getting closer to Japan. The closer we got, the more determined the Japanese were to stop us.
Did you like World at War's exploration of war? How war is a morally gray situation where both sides do questionable things to achieve victory. While Final Fronts throws that out the window and replaces it with a cookie-cutter story that has little to no stakes. The game has Polanski and Roebuck, but they're a far cry from their HD counterparts. You never feel like these characters are in danger, even when put into life or death situations. Spoiler alert, but everyone survives the assault on Shuri Castle, including Roebuck, who, if you recall, died during the last level.
Get on that radio, tell the skipper the Marines have taken Shuri Castle. Pulaski, Turner, Jackson. Secure the area.
Aye, aye, sir!
Good job, Miller. Good job.
So what now, Sergeant? We taking it all the way to Japan?
That's the plan, Pulaski. All the way to Tojo's doorstep.
You serious?
Story isn't the only thing that's suffered, as the gameplay is a step down. From reused assets to simplistic objectives to repetitive level design, Final Fronts is a stale, sanitized experience. Gone is the graphic violence meant to show war's devastation. It's T for teen, which means bloodless deaths and a flamethrower that doesn't incinerate, more like makes enemies act like they're being stung by bees. Things fare slightly better on the European front, but all it does is make you wish you were playing any of the previous Call of Duties. The good news is the game is short. The bad news is all you get is a 4-hour campaign and nothing else. No multiplayer, no zombies, just Jack
and shit. And Jack left town.
The presentation is sloppy. It looks passable, but there are times where it looks like an enhanced PS1 game. Lots of assets are lifted from the previous games. I'm pretty sure I even heard voice lines from Big Red 1 once or twice. Some of the actors from the main game reprised their roles, but they sound bored as hell. I did get a chuckle out of the British characters, all of whom are clearly voiced by American actors putting on exaggerated accents.
Stonetown Square is a supply point for their armor units here. That armor's the reason why the Yanks are having such a hard time breaking through.
Final Fronts is like watching a straight-to-video sequel to your favorite movie. It's made for cheap, but like a straight-to-video flick, it's so bad it's good. It's fascinating to see how Rebellion condensed the game to fit it on the PS2. The toned-down violence and wacky ragdolls had me laughing rather than sulking. It's entertaining, but not for the reasons you'd expect. For several people, this was how they first experienced World at War. Not everyone had an Xbox 360 or PS3, so to have World at War, a T-rated World at War at that, was a godsend back then. Final Fronts is a curiosity. I wouldn't recommend you go out of the way for it, but if you see it for dirt cheap at your used game store, pick it up for a few laughs. Call of Duty World at War Final Fronts gets a 3 out of 10.